Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar, Boosting Sales, Partner Sales, Driving Product Expertise and Revenue Through Training Incentives. And I'm Gordon Johnson. I'm going to be leading this discussion today, and I'm joined by three experts in this field. We handpicked these guys because they've all been in this industry, meaning the channel partner education and sales industry for quite a long time, at least 10 years each. And so I wanted to bring these guys together to answer some very key questions that we have that have been a problem in the industry for quite a long time. And you'll see a little bit more when we get into that. We're going to be talking about the challenges that we see on getting channel partners ready to sell, basically, and what some of the solutions are to overcome that. I'm joined by Brett Strauss, who is with NetExam, an LMS company that's focused on partner training and customer training. And so he's going to talk about some of the more education sides of it. And also John Lay, who has been in the external training business for a very long time, being an expert on training everybody about except for your employees, your partners, external salespeople, distributors, customers, whatever you can think of that's outside of company, which is a very different thing than training employees. And then, of course, Jeff Campbell, who's from Motrain, and Jeff and his company have specialized in focusing on incenting education to get channel partners selling more, basically. And maybe you can add to that a little bit, Jeff, but I think that that's essentially what he's done. And I brought these three together because I think they're uniquely qualified to answer the questions that I have today. And maybe before we start to kick this off and to sort of set the stage, the challenges that we see out there with channel partners and getting channel partners to be educated on your products and know how to sell your products and support your products and actually excel at selling your products. The challenges we have here are distracted partners, where they've got so many different vendors that are partners of theirs, and getting their mind share is difficult. A lot of them are untrained. A lot of them are unmotivated to get education or to sell your products. So that's what we'll talk about today. All right, so let's start with the first question. What are the challenges of driving higher sales from channel partner education, and how can we overcome them? And maybe, Jeff, you can start out with that.
Thanks, Gordon. Well, for starters, I always like to think of a customer or partner training program as a product. And that means it needs, like any other product, it needs a marketing strategy. And to start with, I come at it from a vision of where do you position this from an awareness standpoint, an engagement standpoint, and an advocacy standpoint. So from the awareness side of things, we think about how busy our channel partners are in their day-to-day business. So how do you even let them know about your training program? How do you get them into it? And then how do you get them to keep coming back to it? And so, of course, our platform offers some incentives to incentivize the registration process, friend referrals, and the whole point of all of that is to help the parent company and their marketing team to drive that channel partner awareness about the opportunities that they have to further their training. So that's kind of the first step. The second one is around engagement, and the frameworks that we work from is that none of these people have to take your training. There's no requirement, it's not mandatory. So how do you get them to come in and consume your existing content, as well as if you're developing new products and new content around them, how do you get them to continually come back and learn more about them? And so we incentivize the content consumption strategy as a big part of what we do. Is thinking about how do you position your company as the go-to place to train about products, but also maybe professional knowledge that will help the people develop further in their industry. And what we find, a lot of companies see a shortage of people coming into the industry they have their kind of surface level knowledge, but really as the industry advances, is positioning your training as a place where you build trust with your channel partners. You become the source of knowledge for the industry, and it just helps you position your products, as you said, top of mind in your channel partners, and really capture that mind share. And then the last piece is around advocacy. Is after you establish this training program, how do you then take your channel partners and then help build brand champions out of them? And I don't know if you've ever tried to do this before, get testimonials and some feedback from your customers, but it's incredibly hard. So what we found to be very successful is to incentivize the advocacy piece. So reward testimonials and selfies and videos. Have your channel partners speak about your training program, about their experience, maybe about the incentives that they've earned. And then that can be obviously used by the marketing team to drive further awareness. And it's really it's a flywheel. It's a flywheel of a marketing strategy around training that ultimately gets people more aware about your products. They're better equipped to sell them. Their product knowledge is improved. And then really you capture that mind share, and we just see really explosive growth in the number of people taking the training, but also in the revenue side of things. And then I'd kind of finish off on that. Everything that we do in a training program in terms of the marketing side, it needs to tie directly into the sales and the revenue side. So being very focused on what are the challenges, what are the solutions, but ultimately what's the impact on revenue when we let this play out for a while. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the first question, but I'd love to hear from John and Brett.
John?
Well, I agree with all of that. That is a great way to look at it in terms of a product. One of the things I always come back to when I work with clients that are with partners and channel learning is that it's so different than employee learning, in the sense that employee learning, you can have long courses, you can have boring courses, you can have boring content, and you can just make your employees take that. And they really don't have much to say about it. It's just a mandatory thing. But with channel partners, the biggest frustration or the biggest reality is there's no time. There is no time for training. And if you represent, multiple product lines from multiple companies, there's even less time for training. So the training can't be the way that learning and professional development professionals have done for years of making an hour-long SCORM course. You have to adapt to this lack of time, and you have to adapt to that through adaptive learning. So knowing exactly what your partners are, what they've trained before, lots of demographics that are coming out of the PRM or the CRM system to really feed them just the knowledge they need at the time that they need it. That's a way that you can overcome that lack of time and make your training very useful, that product very useful to them, so that they see that connection to their daily life and their work. And so just anecdotally, I had a client one time that was a reseller of dealer or big machinery equipment, excavator equipment. And they told me that their average dealer salesperson has 2 to 3 minutes a week for training. And so that's just a different mindset that professionals creating training need to do to get that training to their channel partners in the smallest chunks possible when they need it. And that'll help drive higher sales through education. What do you think about that, Brett?
Absolutely. TikTok has really changed the way people think about consuming content and information, and it's rapid fire. It's very quick. Some of the most popular videos on Facebook and YouTube are these little 15-second, 30-second, 1-minute videos that you can consume and get on with the rest of your day. But one thing I would mention that you talked about earlier, Jeff, is I've always known, I've been doing this for 20 years, and there's only 2 ways to get people to do training: threats and bribes. That's it. You can threaten them or you can bribe them. You can't threaten partners. They don't work for you. What you can do is you can bribe the partner organizations. Maybe I'll give you a better margin on the deals that you close after you reach your training goals. Maybe I'll give you a logo to put on your website to identify you as a standout partner. Maybe I'll give you a higher result when people come searching for partners to buy from. If you bribe the partner organization, then the partner CEO they become the person that distributes the threat to the employees that work for them to complete
Yeah.
the training. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not fair, but it's obvious, right? So I think there's always levels of encouragement you can give the partner organization as a whole to make them want to achieve your training goals. You have to light a fire under them. You have to give them a reason. If you build it, they're not going to come. They're not. There's got to be a reason for them to be there. And again, Jeff's whole world is around incentivizing the individuals as well. So there needs to be something in it for the person that's actually taking the time to do the training.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think your incentive program has to be twofold. Of you have to bribe the individuals, but then the organization needs a reason to enforce those bribes
Yeah.
from their standpoint. So it's always looking at it at two levels. I find is a best practice.
It's not pretty, but it's true, right? I mean, let's face it. If you've got kids and they're in school, there's a reason that they're completing their training. They don't want to come home with bad grades. So there needs to be motivations.
Yeah, and I agree with both what you're saying. And I think the interesting part in terms of the external training programs that we see, to your point, Brett, there are situations where companies will purchase, I'm going to say, software and then mandate it to their employees. So it's kind of bubbled under the customer education side of training, but it's really mandated because the purchase was made and then they mandate the training down there. So it feels more like, as you would say, the threat side of things, you must do this. I think of the L&D world as it falls under the threat side of things.
Absolutely.
Like there are consequences if you don't do this training. Whereas I think the external training, it just opens up a completely different sentiment and feeling, and you're trying to build that emotional connection between those partners with your company and your brand. And I think that's where the opportunity lies from. It's more, it feels more in the sense of I will use your words, the bribe side of things.
Yeah.
But really, if done correctly, those bribes, those incentives can offer a stacked value to those people to either further develop their careers. Maybe it makes their daily job better or more comfortable. And I think that's where it's more of a recognition and appreciation that you're showing with these incentives that validate the people's investment of time that they're taking to learn about your products and services. That's how I see it as being different. Yeah, the bribe being a bit of a strong word for
that's a much nicer way to say it.
Yeah.
Incentive is a much nicer way of saying bribe.
Exactly.
Our next question for our esteemed panelists. So what strategies improve partner engagement, boost course completions, and drive partner certification rates? Brett, how about you?
Sure. Well, we kind of, John's already kind of taken the wind out of my sails a little bit here because I can't agree more that smaller is better when it comes to training. There's so little time. You got to get in, you got to get out, you got to get the information across. I made a 2-minute video for NetExam and I tossed it to my 16-year-old son and I said, make this look like a TikTok video. And he put in background music, he clipped it, he cut it, he put in graphic overlays. I didn't even give him any direction and he did a fantastic job. So I would say that if you have a 16-year-old or younger in the family, give it a shot. You might be really shocked with how good the quality of the product that comes out. And
Can I hire him?
Yeah, absolutely, man. But it's engaging. It makes people want to stay focused on it. But make them small, 2-3-minute lessons that they can get in if they have a few minutes in between calls and they can get back out. But one of the big things I would encourage companies to do is a lot of the training I see, it's facts, it's figures, it's numbers, it's percentages. Look, people don't have to memorize all that stuff. You can put that in a PDF and they can hand it off to the customer and they can look it up. I think what's really lacking in the industry is the ability for salespeople to listen to their customers, understand what they need, and then find a way to fit that product into that problem and to help them solve that problem. There's just not enough of that in this world. And I think with the advent of AI and video, there is some really dynamic, great ways to actually record people doing pitches throw curveball questions at them, analyze their responses, and then make recommendations. And even beyond make recommendations, to John's point earlier, build custom content based on the results of those video grades that will help them shore up the problems that they might be having. Maybe they do have a lot of product knowledge, but maybe they're missing the boat on really empathy or understanding what the customer needs. And again, with AI, being able to build fully custom packaged training is really taken off. I think AI is jolting learning more than any other industry. A user can come in and take a course, and let's say they get a 65 on the course. A good LMS can analyze what they missed and build a brand new course just focusing on the 35% they did poorly on, and build a training program for that individual based on what they're lacking. And they can even put it into the format. Maybe that person travels a lot, so they prefer to learn in flashcard format, where it's just one little fact after another. The AI can build a set of flashcards covering the 35% that they failed. So it shouldn't just be, how do I get my people to do my training? You should really try and concentrate on, how do I get 100% of my people to get as close to 100% completion rates on my training? And with AI, you can do that now. Guys, any experience that you've had in the same topic?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, what you're saying to me really resonates in terms of a content consumption strategy. As I mentioned before, we use some incentives to do that, but I think what you're talking about is really a personalized approach to improved training. And really, like your last points around the AI, I think which was interesting to me was, that's really where we look at, from a training perspective, that's developing mastery. So when I was an educator, we used to have this term, like, that person's a 50.0 and go person, meaning that they're going to do the absolutely bare minimum, and then I'm out. Like, I'm good. I've got my 50.0, and I'm on to the next thing. And if you think about developing skills and developing product knowledge, I don't know many professionals that I would feel comfortable buying from or getting their recommendations from if I knew that they only actually acquired 50% of that information or knowledge. And so I think what you're getting at is if you're pushing people towards mastery and finding those gaps, that's a significant improvement of the end results that you're going to get from that training, because you're encouraging or facilitating that mastery loop, which I think is missing in most training programs, especially when it's not mandated. Like, that's the other, like, if you don't have to do it, like, how do you get them to actually do more than what's minimally required?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I look at it, in a real practical way. I carried a quota as an enterprise sales guy for almost 20 years, and you just want to sell more. You can never sell enough. You can never make quota, or it's never easy. You need the skills to be able to sell more. And so one of the great things about channel and partner learning, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, is it's so measurable, and you can measure companies and individuals that have or haven't taken any particular training, and then look in the CRM or PRM and find out how they performed better or worse. And the minute that you make that connection, well, now you can help the average salesperson sell more, because the human nature of it is, if you take this training, it's proven in our organization, you're going to sell on average 24% more, 27% more, whatever that number is. And if you can start tying it to why they want to do that, and just appeal to the human nature of a salesperson that wants to always sell more, then you can overcome this gap with incentives. You can overcome it with good content, but you can also overcome it with good messaging on how you're going to make more money by engaging in this, and more money than you would, with other organizations. So at the end of the day, salespeople are very monetarily driven. And so I think playing to that and focusing in on that is a way to boost those completion rates, which in turn will boost their individual sales, which in turn boosts the organizational sales, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah, and another way we motivate, and it's a little tricky, but we can, we put together, you can put together a list of the partners within an organization and their average grade, or the amount of time they've completed training. And the great, the hidden secret about those top 10 lists is, yeah, you got a couple of people jockeying for the top spots, But the real motivation is not being at the bottom of the list, right? It's a shaming feature, quite honestly. No one likes to say it out loud, but if you got 26 people in your partner organization and you're in the bottom 3 or 4 people, that's an embarrassing place to be. It's a motivation to make people want to do and complete more training. So there's subtle little things that you can do to encourage the people in your organization to get those training levels. But I would imagine, Jeff, that you can offer, we called it 3-0 and go. That's how I was in college. I was a 3-0 and go. I did just enough not to get my ass kicked when I got home, but not enough to really stand out at the time. But I think you can motivate people to complete the training, but you can also remotivate people to excel at the training and give them even higher, spiffs back if they exceed what was expected.
Yeah, from a game,
bribing, shame.
yeah, bribing and
these are all-
shame.
Beating.
Brett got up on the wrong side of the bed today.
That's right.
Hey, man, I was born in the
Yeah.
60s, so.
Yeah. Well, I just thinking that from a gamification standpoint, you're speaking kind of to the leaderboard effect, and certainly that can be a powerful motivator, depending on the persona of the types of people being trained. And one thing that we notice about leaderboards in external training is if they do know each other on a personal level, then it certainly has that kind of effect because, oh, I know that Brett's below me, and I actually know Brett personally. But that can be different if you don't know the people that you're, say, competing with. And one thing that we're looking at is from a metric, what is the leaderboard an actual measurement of? And what is the impact of that measurement for the business? So is it based on just course completions, content consumption? Is it based on other actions that's important to the company? So a measure of leaderboards is interesting depending on what metric you're kind of pegging it to. Another feature that we like to use is what's called levels, and that's just where you have your points, or in our case, a virtual currency, where thresholds are being met, and then you can see not only what the milestones in their progress are and how close they are to going to the next level, but it also starts to segment your customers into those different thresholds. And where that's important is not only from a motivational standpoint as a learner, oh yeah, I'm close to that, to that next level. Well, each level could offer new incentives or new opportunities as one like motivational strategy. But what I think is missing from the business side is people don't realize that level segmentation is an absolute goldmine for business insights. I know exactly who are the people in my top levels. Those are the people that are showing the most interest in our organization, have consumed the most content, know the most about our products, have likely been selling the most. And so we can start to cater our messaging different based on who are these bands or tiers of our different customers that we're working with. And I think that impacts all of your strategies outbound. Like, what is our marketing strategy? How do we help support those? Kind of like that golden rule in business that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of the people. Well, if that's the case, why aren't we targeting? How do we help support and drive the most value we can possibly get from those top level customers? So I think there's 2 parts of that. One's an engagement strategy, but another is like the business insights. Even if you weren't to show that to the end user, just knowing that on the back end is incredibly valuable.
Absolutely.
And it is how you develop those advocates over time.
Yeah.
So now, once we can identify that top 20%, who's the best, then we can get them talking. And when they're talking, we can use that to attract new partners over time and new customers.
Absolutely.
All right, here's a good question for you, and a big challenge in the industry, one of the toughest things. So how can channel leaders and learning teams better collaborate to ensure partner education directly impacts sales and drives business results? John, I think you can hit this one.
Yeah, I'm going to hit this one for sure. Go back to employee learning. If you're a learning and development organization, you're employee learning, that's your job. You're just expected to get that compliance training out. You're expected to really do the minimum from a risk and a cost avoidance standpoint. And that's, that's the particular challenge. But when you're working with channel and partner organizations, you just can't put the content out there. There's separate motivations. So learning and professional development professionals are thinking about course completion, engagement, efficacy of the content. But channel leaders are thinking about sales, getting rid of bad partners, finding new good partners, making everybody sell more to grow that. And so those two things sometimes are at odds. They don't have to be, but they can be at odds. So how do you bridge that gap? Well, you have to bridge that gap. The learning and development professionals need to go and meet with the channel leaders, and not just once, but throughout all time, to understand what their goals are, what their challenges are, what in particular they're measuring at any given time. So any given channel organization is worried about finding new partners. They're worried about onboarding those partners. They're worried about supporting those partners over time. And as we talked about turning them into advocates. But generally, they're not worried about all four of those at the same time or not equally. And so, training and development professionals need to partner with the channel leaders, understand what's working and what's not in terms of their business, and really tie the training in all the ways that we talked about, in the quality of the content, the length of the content, but to tie it directly to helping that sales leader achieve their goals that they need for their organization. And so, if everybody's measuring the same thing and is trying to impact the same business metrics, then that's when an organization really starts to sing. That's when learning and development is doing their job, and it's really facilitating the growth of these partners over time. So if you want to partner with somebody, you got to find out what's important to them and align your training and development strategy with that. And in the corporate world in 2024, and going forward, it's not just customers and partners. It's all, or not just channel partners, but it's also your customers. And it's also your customer facing salespeople and customer support inside your organization. All of those different groups are all part of the extended ecosystem of governance that you should be bringing in and partnering with at all times, because all of those different groups can be impacted from the same learning management system and often the same content or core of content throughout those different organizations. So it's no longer sufficient just to be worried about compliance and doing your employee training. Learning and development professionals, strategic ones and strategic organizations, form that governance network of their channel partners, their service partners, their customer service, their sales, their customers in general, and think about that all holistically. And when you do, then training isn't a cost. It's now something that moves the business needle, is now a revenue generator, and improves business processes, and it really makes the difference in the organization, a competitive difference in comparison to the competition. And so that's the goal now. It's no longer compliance. The goal is now moving the business needle. That's my theory anyway.
We work with companies that on average generate 60 to 75, 80% of the revenue through a channel partner organization. They are reliant on their survival through channel partners. So training and educating them on how to sell that isn't just a checkbox on a to-do list. It is an absolute necessity to make sure they are better at selling, because if they don't sell well, then the entire company slumps. So it's critical to be able to measure that success. You can't just throw some stuff at them and say, okay, they did this, we're covered. You have to be able to measure the difference, to say, okay, these are our non-certified partners, these are our certified partners. To your point earlier, you should know, hey, if you take this course, you're on average, your sales should increase by 3.7% over the year, right? You should understand the exact impact of what that training is on the sales, and you should use that to sell your partners on doing the training. I mean, right there on the course, it say, if you take this course, you should see a 3.7% increase in your yearly sales on this product, right? And that number should change as the number changes. So you're always tying revenue into training, right? It's a real-time feedback loop. And if the number isn't as high as you want, if it's only 0.5% or 1%, then you need to do something about your training. You need to improve the quality of it. Don't just assume because you get some SMEs to throw together a bunch of facts, put them into a PowerPoint and add some voiceover, that's quality training that's going to get your salespeople to a higher goal. You should be trying, that's one of the big difference between an HR LMS and a partner LMS, right? An HR LMS will get you from the mailroom to the boardroom in 15 years. A partner LMS should get your partner organization from 2 million to 5 million sales in 3 years, right? You should be thinking in terms of groups. How do I move this group? How do I, to your point earlier, Jeff, about the 80-20 rule, how do I get more of my 80 into the 20 side, right? How do I shift them over there? And you do that by measuring and analyzing and always trying to improve the quality of your content.
Absolutely. Yeah. And both of what you're saying is kind of resonating with me from recent conversations I've had where the LMS, I'm going to say administrator, is typically coming from, like, if you look at the L&D side, they're continually going to justify the costs associated with offering training. And I think that that's where the L&D mindset around like any type of training, it's a cost center. Whereas what we're talking about is training your external audiences should be considered a revenue generator from the points that you've both made. But what I found interesting is the ownership of the training within these organizations has seemingly shifted in the last year or so. The conversations I'm having with these companies that are looking to train their external partners is where, in fact, it may have actually been owned by the L&D or the HR teams, but they were not getting the results and the metrics were not moving in the right direction. And so those organizations removed the L&D HR lens and that team and assigned the marketing team to own that partner training. And it's fascinating to see the mindset, the talking points, the KPIs, all of the metrics that then shift. The conversation completely changes when the ownership of the training moves into a more marketing and revenue focused I'm going to say strategy. And it's just the alignment that you get then with the senior executive gets, I'm going to say, way more efficient and way more structurally aligned in terms of a business strategy. And I just get super excited when I meet with a team that I know is owned by marketing, because I know what they care about. And ultimately, they just care about measurable metrics, as John's mentioned, that will drive the needle. And that's where we see the best projects happen. And so if anyone's looking at like, hey, how do I get buy-in from senior leadership? Well, it's through that conversation. Try and get the HR, L&D learning folks as far away from the project as you can and move it into your marketing realm. And then not only that, they bring a bigger budget. So
I was going to say
they're gonna make a way better go of it because of that background that they have.
Yeah, they definitely come up with more revenue to spend when they know that spend is going to turn around into more revenue back into the company.
Absolutely.
Sure. I always tell L&D professionals, it's time, it's well past time to embrace channel and partner and customer learning and do it now. Because guess what? If you don't, it's going to happen anyway. It's just going to happen around you. And so,
and they're going to have a bigger budget too. So,
yeah. So the next thing you know, you'll be out in the cold if you're not leading the discussion. The channel partner team is just going to take it on their own, or give it to marketing to do it, or give it to the customer experience team to do it, and bring in some instructional designers. That's great. That works really well. But what you don't get is any of that sharing across the organization. So you lose some of the horsepower on the bigger topic where enterprise training or enterprise learning is channel and partner, but it's also other groups. And so there's certainly advantages to thinking about it all strategically and holistically rather than running into silos. But silos are mandatory when you can't get the leadership out of L&D.
But it makes more sense there, because if you think about it, the marketing department's goal is to increase sales through their jobs and what they do. So why wouldn't channel training have the exact same goal? If it is not increasing sales, then you have a problem and you need to make a change.
100%. Yeah. And I keep coming back to, what does the senior leadership care about? Like, they really don't care about learning metrics. I just don't think they do. I really believe that they care about business metrics.
Yeah.
I think they're sitting around saying, what was our logins yesterday in the LMS?
Yeah. Instead of what was our sales increase over the last quarter.
Yes.
Couldn't
How many
agree
5 stars do we get?
Yeah.
All right. Well, like to thank everybody for joining us today, and especially to our esteemed panelists, Brett Strauss from NetExam, John Lay from Talented Learning, and Jeff Campbell from Motrain. Before we drop off, I just want to leave you with something that I read that I thought was good to share in relation to this topic we've been going through today. And here it is. It's when your partners are trained, they're successful. Nothing drives that training faster or more effectively than the right incentives. So if you make it easy for them to learn, they'll be ready to sell. So let's just think of that. That's our mantra, whether we're technology side or whatever side, employee training, customers, partners, whatever it may be. And we'll leave you with that. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your time.